Facebook and YouTube. Yeah, it must have been with the internet issue that was occurring. So you should see us pop back
Well, good
up.
thing it's just recording.
Yeah, it is. You should see us pop back up here shortly on Facebook. What's weird is Twitch never stopped. Both Facebook stopped.
Well, the Twitch people get to have more fun. The Twitch people are having more fun watching the pre-show. Hey, Twitch.
There you go. All right, guys.
Who thinks of these names?
We are back. I don't know what happened. I was having some internet problems. This is actually what happened. But now that we're back, we should show back up on Facebook. We should be back on YouTube. And we should be live everywhere.
Looks like we are back.
All right. All right. Well, number one thing, if you're going to live stream, make sure that you have an internet connection. It was working just fine before I started, but next week we're going to stream live from Darnell's vMix setup. It seems like I'll just be having some issues on Fridays at 12. It's lunchtime, man. That's when your internet's supposed to work, when you taking your break so you can watch the stream and Maniacs.
Right. Well, you know why it's not working? Because everybody's watching us.
That's right. The whole world is watching.
Right. Your whole area is watching. We'll just come out. I'll probably stream out of AT&T, and we'll have a nice, robust connection versus Comcast. I'll figure out how we're going to come out.
We're going to do a versus. So this week we're using Comcast, and so far it hasn't been a good thing. So next week we'll stream using AT&T, and we'll see which one works better. And by the way, the week after
have
next.
Both.
Okay. So we're going to be taking 2 weeks off in the next. So we'll be here next week, and then after that we'll be off for 2 weeks, and then we'll be back. But
yeah, Father's Day, Father's Days, anniversaries. We're busy. We're busy.
Yeah, we got a lot of things
that week. During that week.
And so I'm excited. Wife and I will be celebrating 25 years.
25. Congratulations, 25.
Yeah,
I will be celebrating my 25th birthday and Father's Day.
There you
go. My 25th birthday times two in a couple years. Well, maybe almost 4 or 5 years.
There you go. There you go. All right, so we are in the pre-show, and we're getting ready to go to the main show here in just about 10 seconds. Before we do, we always like to have our 10-second countdown start us off. And so let's get it. All right, we're back. It's the Streaming Maniacs, and today we're talking about the importance of maintaining your PC or laptop that you use for live streaming. Now, we talked a couple weeks ago. Darnell talked about changing your thermal paste for some of the older machines, and especially if you do happen to change your fan, you definitely want to make sure that you add the thermal paste as well. I just updated one of my machines today, and I did some changes, and I did update the thermal paste. Have not had a chance to check it yet, but it does look like it's maintaining its temperature because that's what the thermal paste does, is to make sure that your cooling system is operating at optimal speed or optimum performance to keep it cool. I have a Cooler Master system.
Right, keep the processor from burning up. You don't want that processor overheating.
It sits right on top of the processor. Right.
And so this is what it looks like.
Yeah, and it's probably time for me to replace my processor, to be honest. So anyway, but we'll see. But hey, we're here and we're live and we're talking about maintaining your PC. Well, Darnell, over the years, let's see, we talked about the Predator. We've talked about, one of the funny story, right, is one of the PCs that were that was in Georgia that was not grounded. It was in an area where the grounding for the electrical wasn't properly set up. Talk about that. Let's start off with that.
Well, one of the things that happened with that computer, it had poor ground and lightning storms hit. We later found out that they stole the grounding rod from the building. And so when lightning hit, the surge hit the computer, took out the power supply, and also damaged the motherboard, I believe. And so we had to get that replaced. And but yeah, you want to make sure your computer is powered right. Surge protectors, battery backups. I highly recommend battery backups for your computer, and that'll help protect it. And most of these battery backups come with warranties that give you insurance on top of that. So that was one of the craziest situations. And we would bring the computer to you. You say, "Hey, it's working great," and we're like, well, "Okay, but every time we bring it back there, it's acting crazy." But kind of find out the ground was bad, and then also you would touch certain pieces, you get a nice little electric shock. So yeah, it was it was a nice situation. However, we that building was a great building, got everything resolved in it. So that was fixed, but we found out that somebody had stole the actual grounding rod. I mean, who does that? I mean, Pookie was busy that day.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, man. But if it was made out of copper, I guess it could have been, worth its weight in copper. Anyway, we'll stay away
Right.
from that. So,
Yeah, because we don't want Ray coming over because we talk about his brother Pookie.
right, allegedly.
Right, allegedly. Yeah, allegedly.
So you see, all types of things can happen. Some things are predictable, some things are not. Some things you'll never figure out, but it can affect your troubleshooting process. It can affect, your processing on your machine. Just different things can happen. And so today we thought it was important to talk about, maintaining your machine. One of the things that I recommend that whatever laptop or PC you use for live streaming, and I'm getting ready to say this, but I'm probably not following this rule today. Dedicate it for your live broadcast, dedicate it for streaming only. Try not to do too many operational things. One, because you run the risk of downloading things like viruses. The other thing is, my opinion, and Darnell may have a different opinion on this, but I think that if you're using a machine for streaming and you keep it dedicated, you really don't need to surf the web anyway. But you definitely don't want to download a lot of stuff on it. And I do not run any additional antivirus software on those particular machines because it can cause a conflict. Now, early years, that was one of the things that I ran into was there was conflict with some of the software antivirus programs, and they would conflict with vMix. And even before vMix, sometimes it would interfere with, at that time I was using Flash Live Media Encoder, and it would create problems. So if you do have antivirus software running, you might want to make sure that it does not conflict with your, software that you run in, whether it be OBS, whether it be vMix, or some of y'all might still be running Flash Media Live Encoder, but whichever one, you want to make sure that you are not running software that conflicts. So all right, I'm gonna bring Darnell back up on the screen. But yeah, so those are just some of the things that, as we think about live streaming, maintaining your machine, and those things. Darnell has a few points that he'll share, and then I'll close out with a few points, and then you guys can enjoy the rest of your lunch, and we'll let you go today.
Oh yeah. Like you said, dedicated computers. All my broadcast streaming computers are 100% dedicated to streaming. They, if I need to go on the web, everything in the house is pretty much networked. I have a computer, one that's behind me, next to me. Those are the primary two and one in front, of course. Those are the primary, technically three, that go to the web that feeds everything in the house. So when we do content, if I have to download it, I download it through the network to the computer as needed. So yeah, and antivirus, oh my goodness, don't get me started on antivirus. I do not like antivirus programs personally because Microsoft has one built in. Microsoft Defender is pretty well done, and like I said, I had 3 systems here that have never seen they may see the internet to get like download something like Dropbox or a tool that's needed. Other than that, they don't see the internet other than sending out to the internet. So that's a good idea to do that. Now, let's talk about maintaining the computer. I know I used to have what's called a yearly cleaning schedule. I used to clean my computers at least once a year. I had an incident where I fell in 2019, so it's kind of hard to get up here and move bits and pieces and get on the floor and pull the computer out. So I have a couple computers that haven't been cleaned since, I won't say how long. However, I looked at one of my computers the other day when I had to plug a part in, and I said, okay, I'm going to have to figure out how to get down here and clean it because the fan intakes were dusty, especially if they're close to the floor. If you have a computer that's close to the floor, you want to make sure you keep it clean and dusted. And if you don't want to do it, you can actually go to your local computer shop. You can support the small shops, and they will gladly clean your computer out for you for a nice fee. And I'm not sure what the rates are. I can always ask the guys that a smaller shop and see what the charge is. However, they do recommend cleaning your computer because one of the things that happens is dust can cake on. It builds up a lot of heat. And if you've ever touched a computer that's super hot, it can be hot to the touch. So if you touch the top of your computer and it feels warm, more than likely and your house is not warm, you may have dust buildup. That's one way you will find out. Now, if you're streaming, heat can be your enemy on the stream. It can create all kinds of interesting scenarios. I'm going through that now, even if the room is too hot. So you even want to, if a room is 80, 90 degrees and you're recording, you're seeing drop frames, you're seeing a lot of yellows or any weird computer function issues, it's probably too hot. And you can also make sure that it stays cool. So you want to, if you're streaming, make sure you maintain a nice, comfortable temperature for the computer. And so that means keeping it clean, keeping it maintained. You also talking to IT guy, local IT guy that we work with at the TV network. He has said one of the biggest things is keeping your thermal paste. So you want to have thermal paste. This is one I just recently purchased. And I actually put it on one of my computers. I turn on like once every 6 months because it gets kind of hot in here until I get everything moved to the actual IT room. And the computer used to only stay on for like 6 hours, and then it was shut down. I turned it on, left it on for almost 24 hours, no issues. So it actually was, and I checked the fans when it would do that. It would give me an overheating message. So if you see that, it's not time to buy a new computer. It's time to get this here reapply the thermal paste, because my wife, she'll tease me if she'll say how many times you say thermal paste. However, the this here is thermal compound. It will also help save your computer. Also, you should do this according to the IT guy I spoke to. Every 2 years you need to change your thermal paste if you're using your computer every day. If it's an everyday computer is on the lot, every 2 years you need to go in there, rub it off, take it off, or have someone do it. Now, some stores may not do it because they want to sell you a new computer. If you can take a computer, I used to buy computers every 2 years, and by doing this method, my laptop has been renewed. Both of my laptops have been renewed. I can get another 2, 3, 4 years out of it before I have to do it again. So, only thing you really have to be concerned about sometimes is getting the memory put in your computer, which is something I got to get done to the laptop we're using now. You monitor your computer. If you see things aren't working well, you may have to get more memory. This is laptop memory. So you want to make sure that you have a really good performing system. So even for streaming, that memory is for my laptop that I have in front of me, which is my editing and streaming laptop. And it works great. And then I have my old Predator laptop, which is actually now dedicated to mainly streaming and editing. And same thing, it's been renewed. The gentleman, he changed the thermal paste earlier this year because I had a situation with my Legion where the thermal paste wasn't there. It was basically non-existent. From the factory, it wasn't put on correctly, I guess.
Oh, wow.
And it cost the fans to run hard, and to the point where the fan burned out. And so the IT guy who I work with had to replace the fans and the thermal paste. He said he actually had to scrape the thermal paste off So it was that hard. So I'm saying that was a manufacturing issue. So sometimes you may get a computer that has manufacturing issues, and the thermal paste, it works great for a couple years. Again, the key is they want you to buy a new computer. That's all it boils down to. They want you to get a new computer, and they don't want you to know that. So for your streaming or any computer maintenance, just maintain the clean, make sure it's cleaned on the inside, and make sure that the temperatures aren't running hot. If you can find where the temperature meters are, find out where the tolerances are on your temperature for your computer. And if you can't find it, find someone who does this. They'll take your computer, they'll turn it on, leave it on for so long, and they'll go in there and check they know where the actual tools are to check the temperatures. So that's some of the things I've learned. But I used to clean my computers at least every year. I would go in there, even when I had my computers in the basement in my old condo. I would still take the computers apart, clean them, dust them, and that's something I learned years ago, to keep a clean computer. But right now, I have been a little negligent. I will admit, I have been negligent on my computer cleaning on the desktops and the towers. However, when I get ready to move this equipment to the IT room, I will be spending time cleaning every computer and getting it ready for its move to a less dusty environment.
Yeah, as you say that, I was thinking about streaming temperature, and I remember doing a jazz event a few years ago outside, and man, you talk about being outside in Birmingham, Alabama, and the heat. And so, those conditions, you want to make sure that, like, when you're streaming in certain areas, and if you're outside and you're doing things, you definitely want to make sure that you have the right type of machine, that it has a good airflow. And I even recommend having a fan, possibly blowing on that machine, right? A lot of times, you may not think about those things, but they are critically important when it comes to maintaining your machine. And then if you do have a PC or a laptop that you're using outside, the chances of it collecting dust much faster is highly probable that you will. And so I recommend keeping, little spray cans so that you can keep the dust out and all of those things. There you go. Always keep your microfiber. But those things are important because you want to maintain the longevity of a machine. And when we get into some of these, think about it. Some of these laptops cost $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, man, for these higher end gaming laptops, which are used to stream. And a lot of the machines that PC builds, can be as much as $15,000, depending on what type of workflow, what type of capture card you're putting in there, and those kind of things. So it's worth protecting your investment whenever you are investing that kind of money into streaming, especially if you are streaming as a business. And what I mean by that is, if you're going out and streaming content for other clients that you may have, you want to make sure that you have sufficient enough equipment so that when you go out, it's properly maintained, it's updated. Keep your Windows updates current. I'm laughing because sometimes you don't want to update it, but you want to run the updates, test your machine. I never recommend running updates prior to going to an event to stream. There's too many things that can happen. So it's always good to run all your updates prior to whatever events you have coming up. Constantly, when you see those notifications pop up, check them. You also want to maintain software efficiency. It's one of the things that, we talk a lot about, because if you are, let's say vMix had an update, right? And you want to make sure that you're in the current update. I also recommend updating testing before you go, into the field, because then that way you make sure that your streaming is configured. I recently had something happen that I had never seen before with a client, and their graphics card actually was disabled, which was allowing their two screens that they had connected to the HDMI wouldn't display because the graphics card was disabled. Now, how it got disabled, I couldn't tell you. They're not savvy enough to disable it intentionally. So I was thinking that the graphics card, maybe the software. So when I went to reinstall the drivers, I noticed that the drivers were all running good. When I tested it, it said that everything is, exactly where it needed to be. And so I wrote that down as one of my notes now for troubleshooting that, it's a thing that I would have never looked for to troubleshoot. And actually, I almost found it by accident, like when I was looking at the NVIDIA drivers. And so these are things that when you go through and you look at, after a Windows update, sometimes Windows shuts things off. And as we know, graphics cards can be sometimes subject to those updates and things can happen. So I can only speculate what happened in that case. But what I do know is that it just wasn't a good look for the client, and they're trying to do what they're trying to do, and they can't get content out to the screens. And so it was one of those things where I had to physically go on site and fix it to resolve it. And so we got that straightened out for them. And now they're up and going and good. But you want to make sure that you maintain your equipment for constant output. It'll help you. One of the things when it comes to hardware, especially if you are one of those who stream with wireless, if you're using a Wi-Fi connection, make sure that your Wi-Fi card that's installed in your machine, stays current. They change. You may want to upgrade. Sometimes it'll start to fail. I've had that happen. I know Darnell has had that happen, where wireless cards begin to fail, and they need to be updated sometimes as well. I had one just completely burn out. And fortunately, I had a hardwired connection that I could pivot to that really came in handy at the time. But these are things sometimes that we don't necessarily think about when it comes to maintaining your PC or your laptop, your hardware. But these things are all physical devices. And so sometimes while the software may be running well, you also have to make sure that your hardware components are running well. This is what helps you to maintain a high quality production and ensuring that everything runs smooth for better video and audio quality. That's another thing too. When it comes to audio, my personal perspective is stay away from the audio outputs that, or the audio inputs on your machine. I recommend using, an audio capture device if you bring your audio in. Something like, this one is horrible. And I'm not saying Focusrite is horrible. I'm just saying the one that I'm holding in my hand is horrible. It cuts in and out, and it has ever since I bought it. Now it's the only one that I know of that's had that problem, but that's why I don't use it. But outside of that, use a external. And the reason why is because the machines are not, in my opinion, and Darnell may have a different perspective on this, but I don't think he does. They're not designed to input audio at a high quality. And so when you use those 3.5 millimeters and plug directly into the machine, typically you're not going to get a good sound, especially if you run the stuff like music and different things like that through there. It's just going to be overmodulated, and oftentimes it's just going to sound horrible. But so from that standpoint, it's not necessarily something with the machine itself. It's just you might want to use an external device to input your audio through. That's my recommendation for audio. Go ahead, Darnell.
Yeah, you may also want to. My cousin on the overheating thing outside. I'm bringing this up. Now, somebody who are Mac fans says, "That's why I get a Mac." Let me tell you something. My cousin has a Mac, and it overheated so bad it shut off while he's a DJ. He had DJ issues with the Mac, so he had to put a fan in front of it just to keep the computer going. So this is not just a PC issue; it's a Mac issue as well.
Yeah.
Now to the audio inputs and outputs on your computer. If you have a desktop computer, normally I've discovered in the past, I'm not sure because I haven't done it without using an interface. I've heard noises. I would hear clock noises from the computer. The noise within the computer will be going into your recording. And then sometimes the output, you had ground looping issues. So yes, use an output box. I mean, you can get them as low as, you get audio capture device. Yeah, $100 for a decent one. But if you're on the cheap side, and I do mean cheap, I don't mean less expensive. I mean, there's some cheap stuff out there that has a little bit of noise floor. However, it gets the job done. I was looking for mine. It's somewhere around here. I have I think I have 4 or 5 of those devices that I use for capturing audio. I have a travel one, depending on the job. I have a stereo one that has 2 XLRs and 1/4-inch combos. I have one that has a 1/4-inch and an XLR 1/4-inch. So it depends on the job when you purchase those capture devices, USB. They save you a lot of issues. This microphone is USB, 100% USB from the out to the computer. And the headset jack is built in. I can't flip it, but I have a headset jack here that goes to this little box here, and this is my earpiece box, and that's how I hear my headphones. And I have a receiver that receives it, and that's my headphones. So USB is pretty good now. You have Thunderbolt, USB, but also make sure you don't go wild and buy a USB splitter expander and use up every lane in your computer.
Oh,
we haven't even talked about computer lanes yet.
Yeah.
The importance of NAT, because you'll call and say, my hard drive's not working. How many? I have 15 USB devices plugged in. Okay, that's the problem. You have too many USB devices plugged in.
It's interesting that you say that, because one of the things, especially when it comes to laptops, I've seen people try to use multiple capture cards for a laptop. So I don't recommend it. You can have latency on one camera. Sometimes you can have frame drops. Especially now, today, you can get something like a Blackmagic A10 Mini and switch that way. I would rather go that route, even though, I understand that most people want to bring each input into vMix. I would rather go that route and not use up all of my buses, because, I've seen it where the mouse would stop working. Now you're trying to switch or do something and it won't, it's frozen, or the whole machine just freezes up, right, in the middle of a broadcast, which is never good. You can't underestimate when you talk about adding these additional USB connections and what it's doing. And, you always have to pay attention. I'm one of those people, and I know Darnell as well. I pay attention to my monitors. And what I mean by that is the diagnostics on the machine. Looking at those diagnostics, they're there for a reason. It'll tell you, what's happening. Recently, Darnell was experiencing some frame drops, talking about temperature and heat and different things like that. To discover that not being in necessarily a temperature controlled environment can impact how hot the machine runs and how fast it's trying to process the information. And depending on how many inputs you have, you look at those diagnostic numbers and you may first think, oh, it's this, or it might be that, not considering the environment overall. And sometimes it takes, when you step outside the environment, you start to look and investigate and you say, wait a minute, if I'm running the same system on this side and I'm doing all of these things here, why is it doing this on that side? And so, and I think, Darnell, that's what experience you had, correct?
Yeah, one of the things on vMix, what I like, and I pulled up I had to move my BTV screen. I want to say it as an example. My render time is 26 milliseconds, which is kind of high. However, it's still giving me a smooth picture. I'm sending out 30 frames per second, and it fluctuates between 17 and 28 milliseconds. And then the computer we're on now, it's doing 60 frames per second, 4 to 5 milliseconds of rendering. So the difference between the two is this computer has an stronger NVIDIA card. The one that I use for streaming doesn't have a strong NVIDIA card, but it has it fluctuates between 47 and 48 inputs, depending on how long it takes the software to kick it out. And also depends on the content. An MPEG file renders out is a little bit heavier versus an MPEG 4. And we haven't gotten into that. MPEG 4, MOV, and all the other formats, how AVI, MKV, all the formats the computer can play affects your render time, which that also then affects your recording because you're using GPU resources, CPU resources. This CPU is at 1%. The other computer here is at 3%. So I'm constantly looking at my meters. We did a seminar years ago where I actually talked about that. Where's the tolerance for your render time before you start having issues? When you see 1,000 milliseconds in render time, you have an issue. That's 1 second. So for every 1,000 milliseconds is 1 second. So I've seen computers render time at 1,500. I've seen frame rates dropping frames. Like in the case with us, we were dropping like 100, maybe 1,800 frames every 5 minutes. And then we did one service at its peak, we dropped 18,000 frames in an hour.
Wow.
That recording's unusable. 18,000. Your tolerance for frame dropping when you're recording 1 or 2 is fine because most people aren't going to notice that fraction of a second of frame drop. But when you get into 18, 19,000 an hour, your recording is done. You have that's a useless recording because it's not going to be worth doing anything. And in our case, where this happened, we have 2 vMix machines, primary, secondary, and they were actually getting ready, one of our other machines are coming back. So, but we had 3 machines we record to. So secondary had no frame drops, but the room was so hot recently, it did drop frames. So we do know that the heat and temperature is a problem. But yeah, it's monitor your levels. That's what that lower left-hand corner the information's for.
Yeah, the little red, yellow, and green icon is for your statistics. And so, like, my render time is usually anywhere from 3 milliseconds to about 8, I think, at the most, at least on this machine. Now, keep in mind the amount of inputs that you run also can affect it, as Darnell said. I think the other thing, too, is when you open it up, you can see per input what type of frame drops you're getting also. So if you have something that may be in your input that you're not using that could be causing issues, easy thing to do is just go ahead and close it out. That way, if it's not critical to your live stream and you don't need it, hey, don't use it. That's my thought, is just get rid of it.
And I also minimize my inputs if I'm not using them.
Yeah, I do the same.
And you click on there and it's right click. Yeah, right click. If you were to see the BTV. Now, when they're open, it does eat up resources. But when it minimizes, I found that I don't have that much use. So I minimize almost every one of them except for the active and 2 others. I also have a multi-viewer, so I just run it.
No, same here. And I'm a big categories person. I set up all of my categories. My main one is everything. My other one is live content. Then my lower thirds, my open and close. So whatever it is that, I'm looking for, and I constantly use the search option as well because it helps to bring those up. And the reason why that's important is because if you have specific categories and you're not using it, you just minimize everything in those categories as well. And so, categories help you to create a better workflow. At least it does for me. But I think for today, maintaining your PC or your laptop, is what we wanted to talk about. A well-maintained system reflects your commitment to quality professionalism, which can help you build trust and loyalty with your audience, and it'll help you build trust and loyalty with your clients if you are a provider of live streaming services where you're going out and you are producing. You got to understand, when you show up at an event and it's a live stream, you got one opportunity to shine. And I even recommend having a backup machine. At minimum, if you're doing a big event, have a laptop that's capable of managing at least 50% of that if you're using a PC in your operation. Now, that might be overkill for some people. I am an overkill kind of person. I believe in more is better, but less is more in some situations. But I do believe I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And with today's tools that you can have, literally, you can drop certain things in your bag that will pull you out of a clutch in a minute. And not like it was, go back about 16 years ago, that wasn't the case. And even now, some of the stuff that you can run and buy at like a Micro Center and Best Buy, man, prior to the pandemic, you couldn't get some of the stuff. You had to order it from either B&H, Adorama. You wasn't just buying streaming stuff
Marker
off the
Tech.
shelf. Say that again.
Marker Tech.
Yeah, and so because you weren't just buying this stuff off the shelf, you couldn't just go get it. And so the luxury of it, like even now, you can buy PTZ optics cameras at Micro Center, but if you're watching this and you want PTZ optics cameras, you want to buy yours from Streaming Maniacs.
Yes.
Because we're going to help you with the setup and the configuration of your entire workflow. Well, Darnell, that was all I think that we was covering today. Did you have anything else that you wanted to touch on?
No, I'm just happy to get this information out. I think we should talk about the categories in vMix because a lot of people don't know how important that is. So we'll bring that up in the future, how to structure that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we could do a screen share and show how we can, maximize those categories. Yeah, I'm an avid user of categories. So,
oh yeah, I have too many.
There you have it. It has been another Streaming Maniacs production, and we are going to go off the air, and we will see you guys next week. Stay tuned for our topic, and we will catch up with you later. Here's our 10-second rollout.
Yep, and I'll be in our studio too.
Man, that's going to be good.
Oh, yeah.